Hello, I'm Professor Lieu, here today with art prof teaching artist Lauryn Welch. Welcome to our video where we critique art from movies, or in today's case, we do some detective work. Today we are looking at a painting from Picard, which is the new Star Trek series. If you would like to grow as an artist but you can't afford an art class, we've got everything you need here at Art Prof, critiques and tutorials. All right, before we take a look at this painting, which is titled Daughter, and it's by Data, who is the android character in Picard, I want those of you to know that there are spoilers in this video. If you have not seen Picard episode 1, turn it off right now because we're going to talk about all types of things that happen in episode 1.
Yes.
Now, this is a continuation of our last stream. So, in our last stream, Lauren and I really sat down. We critiqued the painting. We talked about the formal elements and that type of thing. But we also had a little bit of a reveal during that video because we figured out actually that Data ripped off Winslow Homer. This is
like a lot. Like we found two waves, I think, that were exactly the same. And we thought that was a big deal. But just wait. This was only the tip of the iceberg, guys.
there's a lot more because we
Oh,
did more sleuthing, right, Lauren?
we did, with the help of some of our art prof family here.
Struggling Sketcher, you get a big credit for helping us because you did your research and you helped us quite a bit. So we're going to credit you on that. Basically, I'm going to show you guys the whole story. So I'm going to show you my big chart. I'm very proud of it. It basically shows all of the portions of Data's painting that have all been lifted from Winslow Homer. So it's
Ah!
actually not just the two crests. There's also a section on the left, and actually the tornado in the upper right hand corner is also lifted from
So
Winslow
crazy.
Homer.
That's so I we had talked about that tornado possibly being lifted from somewhere. I thought it was going to be a different artist. No, this Data did not even venture outside of the world of Winslow Homer. This is just an entire Winslow Homer collage. You could basically cut out these individual parts and stick them together and it would make the exact same painting.
I mean, I was thinking, hey, maybe Data sourced from Jam W. Turner. Maybe there's a little bit of Corbet in there. But no, all three of the sources that were lifted, they're all from Winslow Homer.
Yeah, it's I mean, this is kind of crazy. On the one hand, I feel like this is kind of smart. Like, it's kind of smart to cut up a painting basically and put it back together in a new way and create a somewhat new painting. I'm intrigued. On the other hand, there's a part of me that's like, okay, so what if someone did that with one of my paintings where they clearly like took apart from this painting and took apart from this painting and put them together a new painting and then claimed it as their own, or like claimed it as their character's own, I guess. Like, how would I feel? I would probably not feel great. Or maybe I'd feel really flattered. I'm not sure. That's never happened to me. Like, how do you feel about this, Clara?
Well, let's actually ask the people in the chat. If you were Winslow Homer and you discovered that Data on the new Star Trek series had ripped off your painting and lifted literal crests of water from your painting, how would that make you feel? Would you say, oh, he's paying homage to me as an artist? Would you think it was plagiarism? Would you say, oh no, he's just being inspired by me? Whatever your point of view is, tell us in the chat. Hello, Tammy. Thank you so much for showing up. By the way, just a little bit of background information. If you guys do not know, the person in the painting is actually this character Dodge. So she shows up and she actually is Data's daughter and she talks to Picard and actually she gets killed right away within like 15 minutes of the show. So it's a little bit tragic in a way. But let's take a glance at the full chart and we're going to break down piece by piece in addition to the pieces we showed you last time, the new discoveries that we made, again, with the help of Struggling Sketcher. Thank you so much. Let's see. Ray is saying in the chat, I do a hard eye roll. They trash my work with that wonky.
Yeah, what if it's a bad rendition? Like, do you think the technique of the artist makes a difference? Like, if they do it really well, if they copy your work really well, would you be more flattered by that than if it was like really crappy?
I don't know that it makes a difference to me because it's like the intent is the same, right?
Yeah, but I'm still unsure about it. I know that there's also, I feel like the arena, it depends on the arena too. Like, clearly I feel like it's okay for Winslow Homer because he's dead and like doesn't care. Um,
And by the way, the Winslow Homer paintings, in case you don't know, those are public domain. So
yeah,
legally, this is all totally cool for them to do that. I'm sure that's why they picked Winslow Homer. But
yeah.
I do think it brings up a lot of issues because with the internet, it's so easy to steal somebody's stuff.
And this is the thing is that so this case is like legally okay, but there's so many instances I've seen where a person, like a small artist, gets ripped off by a company, or even on like YouTube or Instagram, huge followings, like one artist may be like peeling off, I'm going to say, followers from another artist because they start emulating that person's style. And then there's a lot of social unrest, politics that come up as a result. And so I'm just interested in how this plays out in the real world, or if this was under a different situation, like what would be the result.
Ray is saying if the plagiarist had any understanding or respect, it might go down easier. In this case, I think not. Hello, Gearhead. Well, I'm wondering, Lauryn, actually, do you think the art director said to the in real life artist, oh, take these Winslow Homer paintings, get the crest, and make it like this? So it's a patchwork quilt of Winslow Homer paintings. Or do you think they just said, oh, artist, make a painting of a hooded woman at a beach? And then the artist was like, oh, I got to do this really fast. I'm on a deadline. Okay, I'll just take Winslow Homer. Like, I wonder whose idea it was. Was it the art director? Was it the actual artist? I mean, there's no way we can really know because I tried to find it. I couldn't find any information about it.
There's no way of knowing, but generally, based on my general knowledge of people that work in that field, my guess is that it was a very short time frame. The person was like, oh, these people do like a great job at this particular type of work. I'm going to like copy that. I'm going to check in with my boss, make sure legally I'm not going to get in trouble, and then just go ahead and do it. I think from a monetary, like financial standpoint, there's probably a lot of like trying to be careful around that because that can really blow up. Like there can be like big lawsuits and stuff like that. But ethically speaking, I don't think that's being like taken into account, especially with an artist that is, dead and famous already.
Speaking of lawsuits, we actually have an example of that happening. So in 1985, we're looking at a photo here. It's by professional photographer Art Rogers. And there was a lawsuit where Art Rogers sued Jeff Koons because Jeff Koons made a sculpture that I think we can agree is pretty similar to Art Rogers' photo. And Jeff Koons is the type of
Yeah.
guy, he's been sued a lot by a lot of people. But in this case, Jeff Koons lost the lawsuit and they decided that, yes, this is way too close to the
Yeah.
photograph that Art Rogers made.
I mean, so there's this thing that we've talked about, I think, in previous streams of punching up versus punching down also being an issue. So what that means is if you're punching up, like you're taking or making fun of something from someone who is above you, who is also famous, or at least on the same level as you. And that is generally like seen as more okay than punching down, which is taking or making fun of work or copying work that is by someone who's less known from you or who has less power in the art world or general world than you. So for that particular piece, the photograph of the puppies, I don't know that photographer. I don't think that they're as famous as Jeff Koons because Jeff Koons is a really big deal. So in that case, it makes sense to me why there would be like this huge lawsuit because it's punching down. It's taking from someone who has less power.
If I was Art Rogers, I would be pissed. I mean, I think the similarity it's so obvious. It's not like at least with this painting that's in the Star Trek series, the artist tried to hide it. It's not that obvious that it's from
Right.
those Winslow Homer paintings. I mean, it's like, what are the chances that I happen to go to the Clark Institute and take a photo of that and then notice it? I mean, that's such a coincidence.
Yeah.
Phoebe P is saying in the chat, I think there's other ways to show an homage to an artist. I'd be a little mad, especially if they were just lazy about it.
Do
So,
you think?
Lauren, let's look at some homages that I think are really lovely.
Yeah.
One would be this one from Pixar. So, if you guys have ever seen the opening of Pixar, there's this cute little lamp and it jumps across and then it stands in the position of the eye and it turns around and faces you. I think that's a pretty common sequence. And those of you who have seen Spirited Away, which is by Miyazaki, there's a scene at the end where this little lamp comes jumping around and it meets up with No Face and Chihiro. And I don't think I recognized it when I watched Spirited Away, but I think later on I had read somewhere that it was a very specific homage to Pixar. It was not an accident.
That I love that so much. Like that seems like a great homage to me because okay, so first of all, I've seen that movie 100 times. I didn't realize that it was related to the Pixar thing, and I think that's because it's so clearly done in Miyazaki's style. It also references, I feel like some Japanese like monster mythology type of stuff, like both in the style that it's done in and just some of like the creatures that exist. I'm thinking of this particular one that's like an umbrella with an eye and a foot. Like that's what this reminds me of. So I think like what makes this a great homage is that there it's clearly done in Miyazaki's style. Like Miyazaki has some both stylistic and content backing that adds to this. Like it's not just like taking the Pixar lamp and sticking it in there. And it also, when I learned that that is based off of the Miyazaki, or not the Miyazaki, but the Pixar light, it makes me feel happy. Like it's like a little Easter egg. I'm like, oh, that's really cool. It's like it's like finding something out, like a little bit of treasure. So I think that I'm not a master at this, but that's like my emotional feeling, my emotional like gut feeling about it. I don't know. How do you feel about it? How do you guys in the chat feel about it? Do you think this is a good homage
Yeah,
or not?
tell us in the chat, looking at the Miyazaki and the Pixar version, what do you think about that? And what do you think about the Jeff Koons situation with the string of puppies that we talked about? Because people have very different opinions about it, and I just would love to
Yeah.
have that discussion. While you guys are doing that, though, let's break down our new discoveries in the Winslow Homer version. So basically, Struggling Sketcher gets the credit for this because they had left a comment after we had posted the last stream and they said, I think it's from the Gulf Stream. Because if you guys look at this painting, does everybody see the red arrow that I'm pointing at the tornado in the upper right hand corner?
Mm-hmm.
Then, if you guys look at the actual artwork, you can see there's a very similar tornado and it's really specific in shape. It's not your generic tornado shape. And then if you overlay Homer's painting on top of the painting of Dodge, I mean, it lines up. Like, it's like not even a little bit different. It's
Yeah.
extremely similar.
Look at that sideline. Like if you look to the right of the funnel bit, and there's that little bit breaking off of it. Even that is like exactly the same down to the angle.
Yeah, it's got
Yeah.
this like tilt to it
Yeah.
that is not an accident. It's so obvious.
Yeah.
Let's see. In the chat, Ray Mayo is saying, I think the animation is sweet and respectful. I agree too. I think it's so lovely. And I think, Lauren, what you had said earlier about Miyazaki's voice still being visible in the lamp that he animated, that to me is everything. because this artist who did this painting from Star Trek Picard, to me, this is a pretty blatant copy of what's going on. Like, there's no innovation, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, this is hard. This is very hard, Clara. Let's also think about this in terms of who is the voice here, or what is the voice trying to do? Because in the Miyazaki piece, which we're kind of at least getting this idea that it's a pretty good homage, Miyazaki is the primary voice here. Like, he's the one that is putting this together. We all know his name. Like, we all know he made this. Now, this artist here is trying to actually be as invisible as possible. They, at least like the artist that is creating this for the show. Like,
Right.
this is supposed to be a piece that advances the plot. It's supposed to be a work that's by Data, an android. So the artist that actually like put their hand to the canvas that made this wants to be invisible. Now, does that make that any more or less okay in this instance to make this piece as it is?
Well, the thing is, it's like, what are the chances that we found this? It's just ridiculous to me that we actually found this. I'm sure that they thought that nobody was going to notice and they could get away with it.
Yeah.
But if I were Winslow Homer, I don't know. I'd feel kind of annoyed. I'd be like, you can't have your own voice for
Yeah.
landscape. I mean, I feel like that should be a lot easier than that.
Oh.
Okay, let's look at the second section that we figured out. And what's so funny to me about the second area is that the painting that they ended up referencing for this, it's actually at the RISD Museum. And I was like, what? Okay, what are the chances that I went to the Clark Art Institute, saw the first painting, and now the second painting, or rather third painting that they ripped off, is actually at the museum where I work.
I feel like this should
So
win you
bizarre.
a kind of prize. Like you.
So, of course, like the big art history dork I am, I had to stop by the RISD Museum an hour before class, took a dorky selfie in front of the Winslow Homer painting, and I actually loved seeing it in person, obviously, because you can see all the
You're such a
brushwork and all the details. But you know what's so annoying about this painting is that in the museum, there's a stupid light, like right in the middle, and you cannot take a photo of it without
the
getting tons and tons of glare. It's so annoying.
Wait, so okay, this makes me think of some other things here. I wonder where this person is from. I wonder if they've seen these paintings in person.
You mean the artist?
The person that is doing this for Data. Yeah.
I doubt it. I mean, what, you think they live in Providence? Like,
Well, I don't know. I mean, like, they clearly pulled a lot of the same paintings that you visited. Like, maybe they didn't see them online, but maybe they're in an area where, like, these collections are, like, more prevalent together. I don't know. This just seems so crazy to me.
it is funny. Okay, so let's take a look at how it actually lines up with the painting from Picard. So if you guys look at the actual painting from Picard, it's this big puff of water on the left-hand side. So does everybody see that this is the one spot? It's this bump of three blue shapes that for me is what really lines it up. Because actually, Lauryn, when I show this, you guys will see the artist got lazy. Like, they did not put in remotely the same amount of detail as what's in the Homer painting. But if you guys put the Homer image on top, you see the three bumps, you guys, those of you in the chat, you see the three bumps? They totally line up. So let me flip back and forth a little bit better. And Lauryn, do you see how in the painting from the series that the white is not as detailed as the Homer painting?
Right. Yeah. So we talked about this previously in the last critique that we had of this piece. And I was on the side the white was pretty decently rendered. Like, there were several whites in here. But obviously, when you look at the original piece that this is coming from, the Homer piece, like, it doesn't even like hold a candle to it. Like, look at all the warms versus cools in the Homer piece. Like, there's a lot going on that really, we think about white as just this one color, but it's these many colors, and you can really warp them to make a volumetric piece within a painting. Like, also going beyond just that like spray over there, at least in the Homer piece. I want to draw attention to that water that's coming in from like towards the foreground, that grayish water. I find that so beautiful and such a great example of what you can do with neutrals to like really make them active. And also why titanium white, like if you are a painter, especially like an oil painter, you want to not rely on that. You want to use like your zincs and like all your other white and white adjacent colors to create white colors. Like that's a really lovely scene right there.
Oh, I mean, I was looking up close at the brushwork in this spray of water, and I could not believe the range of texture. And if you look at the Picard painting, it's really flat. I mean, to me, that is verging on looking like an underpainting. Like, does not really feel like an area that was well layered. And so it's sort of like a bummer, you guys, because we were asking earlier, we are like, would you be mad if you were Winslow Homer? And it's sort of like, okay, you're going to rip off my stuff and you're going to do a crappy job of painting it. Like, at least you could learn something in the progress about your brushwork, because master copies, guys, is actually a great way to learn about painting, to try out different techniques. I did that a lot when I was in art school, but I did that as an exercise. I did that because I
Yeah.
really wanted to just learn how some of those paintings function. So, Lauryn, I'm going to say that I don't like this. I think it bothers me a lot.
I mean, yeah, I don't think, like, clearly the artist was the person that made this for data is not thinking about people like us that are real art nerds. Or maybe there's not like a huge crossover between, I'm going to say, like, classically trained or educated artists versus Trekkies. Shout out to anyone in the chat or anybody watching this who like goes into both fields, because I know that they do exist. Like clearly we have found them and we're just gonna like yell at these people that this like we see what they're doing. Um, like like we don't want to perpetuate that stereotype that they're separate, but like I also just want to say that this is like it feels like based on that way that this is really obviously like referenced from a photograph, because there are so many textures that you are pulling out in that painting in those close-ups, and because you got to see it in real life, so you got to focus on those like little close-ups. And then here in the data piece, it is much more image based, not ground based.
Right. I
Like
mean, you just miss so much when you see the painting in a photo. There's just, especially the brushwork, I think is really hard to capture in a photo. Tammy is saying in the chat that museum looks beautiful. Cool pick. Yeah, the RISD Museum is sort of an odd museum because there's an older wing of it which has been there for a really long time. But then a few years back, they actually added two editions. There was one edition when I was there in the 90s, and then a couple years ago, they added another edition, which is called the Chase Center. So it's
yeah.
this odd conglomeration of all these different portions that are going on. But Lauryn, let's show another homage that I happen to really like a lot, and it's different than the Miyazaki and the Pixar one that we showed, because this one is so cute. I mean, how can you not like this? This is just great. So this one, if any of you guys have ever seen the film, it's called The Untouchables. It's from 1987.
Yeah.
It's the only movie I like Kevin Costner in. Usually he annoys me so much, but I really like him in this movie.
I feel so weirdly about this movie. I just saw this movie a few months ago, so it's really funny that you brought this one up. To be honest, I had a hard time staying awake through the entire thing, but I did catch this scene, and this is another thing where I'm like, oh, the homage, you can tell the homage is successful because of that Easter egg type feeling. Like if you watch this without knowing what it's coming from, you're like, what? Why is this happening? Why is the baby moving in slow motion down the stairs? Why is there so much attention to the baby? Why are there sailors? Why are there sailors in this? Where'd they come from? And then you watch the battleship of, was it Potemkin?
Potemkin.
Yeah. That it's a very serious, very dramatic shot. Like it really hits you. It's kind of like terrible, like this depiction of war and civilians dying. But then you see the baby carriage and you're like, oh my God, that's what it's from. It's like such a, so there's like all this sadness, but then all of this like discovery, like joyful discovery within that. So yeah, anyways, I am expressing my love for this scene. It's a good scene.
And I think you make a good point that the thing about the Pixar and the Miyazaki version in both of these circumstances and the Untouchables, a lot of people don't catch this unless they have seen Battleship Potemkin before, they took like a film class. They're not that easy to find. I mean, I suppose the one that we did is not that easy to find either, but once you find it, you get kind of mad. I don't know.
Well, it's. I think we are getting kind of mad. Well, we were kind of like, ooh, like there was definitely some like like conspiratorialness there. But I think we felt kind of mad because there was no improvisation really beyond like mixing and matching. Um, I think this brings up some interesting feelings that I have about yeah, just image referencing in general and taking images from like other places or like say patterns from like other like countries, like how to make that okay or what's not okay. And I feel like this is just like a great guide in general for like learning how to deal with it. Like Miyazaki clearly had some relationship like with Pixar or like it feels friendly, like a hey, like a handshake kind of. Whereas like this Homer piece feels like a little sleazy. Like I'm gonna take this and nobody's gonna know unless they know that piece, and then it's like an exact ripoff. So I'm thinking about how this might be used, like say when you're referencing things from another place or like another culture, like how you would want to go about that.
I mean, I wonder if it's just a matter of transparency. That
Yeah,
like picture this. I'm sure they would never take the airtime to do this. But like if Data did the painting and in that conversation with Picard, he said in that Data voice, I have sourced the paintings of the 18th century painter Winslow Homer, and I considered his brushwork. You know, like maybe I could cut them a little bit of a break,
yeah,
but
I would
they
feel a little
didn't.
bit better. Yeah, it's like yeah, how maybe that's a good gauge is how comfortable would you feel like talking about referencing that, like how comfortable would this artist who has done this painting here for the show feel it, how comfortable would they feel talking about referencing Homer?
I mean,
Do you
I
think?
would feel a little ashamed. I don't know. You guys in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
chat, if you were the artist and you did this, is this the type of thing you would hide from people? Like, would you not want people to know? Or would you go around and be like, dude, I did the painting of Dodge in the new Star Trek and just hope nobody finds it? But then if
yeah.
somebody does, I don't know. I think I would feel some shame.
Yeah, it's like this like trying to like pass it off as yours or claim that it's yours when it's clearly not. I don't know how to like properly articulate that. It's more like a feel like a gut feeling that I have over it.
Well, the thing is, I have seen my work ripped off all over the internet. I mean, I have this like one drawing. Honestly, I don't think it's that great, but I don't know for some reason it's like all over the place. And I have so many people who come to me and they're like, "Can I make this into a tattoo? I want to put this on my album cover." And it just drives me up the wall. I mean, there have been like one or two circumstances where the people were willing to pay a respectable rate. So I gave them the permission for one-time use, but I guess for me, when it crosses a line, if like Target took one of my drawings, which they never would, because I don't really fit in their brand. But
Yeah.
if Target did that and they launched a whole series of t shirts and made hundreds of thousands of dollars, I would absolutely get a lawyer and sue them. But when it's like some random person on the internet and they change the colors and they put it on, like, I don't really care. And some people do tag me, which is fine, but it's a problem for a lot of artists today. It's something that you can't not think about if
Have
you
you
decide to
ever
put your work online.
have you ever seen an homage to your work that you have been, you don't have to name specifics. I know that's like uncomfortable, but have you ever seen one where you're like, oh wow, that's really cool what they did. Like they're referencing my work, but they're doing it in an interesting way. Has that ever happened?
Well, I definitely have had a lot of high school students who will take one of my drawings and like copy it for
Mhm.
study because a lot of them get assignments in their art classes and they have to
Yeah.
like pick an artist to reference. So they'll do that. I'm totally fine with that. That's great. I mean, I'm flattered for them to do that. But I have been in a couple situations where people didn't credit me and then other people told me about it and said, hey, this person posted this, you should know about it. And so it's hard because on one hand you can't really police everything, but I'm sometimes shocked that people can really help you when they see the stuff and they see it being ripped off. I'm surprised by that.
Has anybody in the chat here ever been ripped off by another person or another artist in terms of people taking your work? I know posting online, it's basically, it's almost like bound to happen because images are so, I mean, it's so easy to download an image and just like work from that image. I mean, like you've done it and I've done it where we take like source material from like photographs or whatever. And we're like, okay, we're going to incorporate this like uh, but I'm just interested in the like what our group here feels like. What's your experience of plagiarism or homages or anything in between?
Danny J saying, I think it's okay if it's meant to be referenced. Okay, good. So I'm glad we have a broad range of opinions because I think the most important thing about our discussions here is that we hear a broad range of opinions. Like, I don't want to be the platform that pushes one way to think about things because there just isn't. With visual art, there's just so many different options. All right, guys, I hope you will take a look at some of our other movie critiques and that if you like our content and you want to continue to grow as an artist, you will subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to make sure you don't miss out on anything. And thank you so much to our top Patreon supporters for your support, for helping us keep the lights on. And thank you to all of you who participated in the stream. Love these conversations. You guys make this so much fun. All right, have a good night. Bye.